In the previous tutorial, you took the time to fill out the monthly template. That was the setup information for the entire workbook. Now we'll look at how you actually enter data. So that occurs on the daily transactions worksheet. The first thing you'll notice at the top is there is a current balance. So this is based on information you entered in the monthly template, in addition to any actual transactions that have been entered on this worksheet. So for example, if we look at the monthly template, so this has actually been completely filled out now. You'll see the starting balance is $2,434. And since no transactions have been entered, that's what's reflected in the current balance. Now perhaps you're looking at the row number 3590 on the left and wondering why I'm saying no transactions have been entered. Well, actually, the group of rows that are not displayed, you can display them by clicking on the plus sign. This is a compilation of information collected from the monthly template across all the various months and populated for you in advance on the daily transactions worksheet. This is done to maintain the calculations. None of what's entered here is relevant to what you'll be entering, and therefore it's been hidden just to keep it out of the way for you, since you don't want to have to scroll down 3,000 plus rows every time you open this sheet. So that's why they've been grouped and hidden. It's not something you ever need to reference. You might also notice on the right, there are some hidden columns. Again, this is information that is not relevant to what you will enter, but it's information needed for other calculations. So it needs to be on the sheet, but you don't need to have it interfering with your vision and what you're entering. So it's been hidden for you. Let's actually enter some information. So row 3590 is the very first row where you would enter data. So let's try entering a date. Enter the 14th of February, and I hit enter. The first thing you notice is the color banding that's appeared here. This is actually a dynamic table that's been inserted for you. The color banding simply appears to help you differentiate the rows as you're entering data. And the appearance of the color banding also confirms that the table is actually functioning. So all good news. So once you've entered a date, when you click on the next column, you'll see it's a drop down. This is a collection of all the different possible categories that you could enter transactions for. So let's select food. And then in the next cell is another drop down. This is a subcategories for everything in the food category. So we'll say groceries. We're going to log a grocery purchase. So for the purposes of our example, we purchased groceries with a credit card. Now, which credit card did we use? Let's select MasterCard. So in the column that represents the MasterCard, now you notice there are two references here. Credit card 3, this is going to match the drop-down selections that I'll show you later on for credit card payments. On the other hand, credit card MasterCard, that reflects the name that you entered, the nickname you entered in your monthly template. So if we go back to the template and look to the right, remember we entered credit card information, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, Costco, and then we left the default values of 5 and 6. That's reflected here, Amex, Visa, MasterCard, Costco, 5 and 6. So this is just a double reference to make it easier to remember which credit card number is associated with which credit card nickname. So we purchased groceries with a credit card. The groceries amounted to $43.93. So that's it. That's all you have to enter. You've logged a transaction against a credit card. Remember, it was an expense. That means it's a debit. That means it needs to be negative. So a negative value is entered. And you'll notice in the expense amounts column, that's column L, that's also been reflected. Enter another transaction here. Something that's important to note is in column A, the transactions do not need to be entered in chronological order. This is great for those of us who forget to make entries now and then, especially from credit cards. No worries at all. The order in which you enter the transactions does not make a difference. So let's say I forgot to note a transaction that occurred on the 4th of February. Date, again, you see the color banding is different now. So you see a darker purple and a lighter purple. And we select from the category. Let's say this was an insurance payment. And in the subcategory, this was, let's say it was home insurance. Now this transaction was not paid with a credit card. This transaction came directly out of my account. So the account is in column E. Now this was still a debit, it was an expense. Let's pretend home insurance was $100. And that's been entered. And again, you'll notice on the left in column L, it has been noted as an expense. So now let's enter something that is not an expense. Let's say I received my salary. And let's say my salary came through on the 10th of February. To enter the date, again, you'll see the color banding. I'm going to enter income for category, and in the subcategory, I'll choose salary 1. So let's pretend my salary is $1,800. So this was a positive value because it's a credit in the account activity column. You'll notice in column L, it did not populate that entry because it's not an expense. Column L is the expense amount only. Now let's log another entry. In this case, this will be an online bank transfer. That's something that you might have come up occasionally. Let's say this occurred on the 12th of February. I'm going to select income here because it's a bank transfer from a different account into this account. And we will specify that as, deposits, transfers from other accounts. Now, it's going to be deposited into this account, so that means it's a credit. And let's say I did $2,500. Again, you'll notice it's not logged in the expense amount because it was not an expense, it's a credit. If you're doing this through online banking, then you will also potentially have a transaction confirmation number, and that's what column D is for. So typically these are a combination of letters and numbers, sometimes some other characters. Column D provides a location where you can enter this information and keep track of your entries. You could also use column D for instances where you might not remember what the purchase was for. So let's say for groceries, for example, maybe there was a specific reason for those groceries. Maybe this was for a friend's party. So the transaction confirmation column gives you a convenient location to enter your transaction numbers from your online banking or notes for something so that you can keep track of your items. And now let's do a credit card payment. This is important because a lot of people get confused about how to log this in this particular spreadsheet. So let's say we had a credit card payment. Actually, let's have a credit card payment in the future. So we went online, did some banking, and we know we have a credit card payment coming up on the 26th of February. As you can see in the current balance reference, today's date is the 17th of February. So the 26th of February is in the future. You can enter future transactions, past transactions, anything that is a transaction you'll enter on the daily transactions worksheet. So in this case, it's a credit card payment. That's going to be under loans and credit. And we'll be paying the MasterCard. So that's credit card 3. Notice the references here, MasterCard, credit card 3. So we'll select credit card 3 payment. And when you're doing your online banking, again, you'll have some sort of transaction reference. Now, you might think you should enter the credit card payment under the credit card column. For this particular spreadsheet, that is not what you want to do. You only want to enter the purchases you make or refunds you might receive on those credit cards in the credit card columns. When you're making a payment, that's coming out of your account. So we want that in the account activity. And it's a payment, so that means it's an expense, and it's going to be a negative value. So if you had an $800 credit card bill that you need to pay on the 26th, you would enter your negative 800 in the account activity column. You might be wondering, why didn't that expense appear in column L? Column L is not just expenses, so I misled you a little bit earlier. Typically, most of your expenses will be logged there. However, your credit card expense is slightly different. So remember previously when we were filling out the monthly template, I explained to you how you don't want to specify a number for your credit card payment if you've already specified the amounts you expect to spend on various categories. Because if you did that, then you would have a double payment. It would appear twice. And that's the same situation here. So you're not going to see a credit card payment appear in column L. Not to worry, that's exactly how it is supposed to behave, and that's the information that you're going to see here. As I've been entering information, you may have noticed the current account balance has been changing, which makes complete sense because we started with a balance of 2434, and now we have some entries that have occurred here. So remember that the daily transactions worksheet is all about actual amounts. So we started with the 2434 balance, and we've incurred some transactions. Columns F through K are credit card transactions, so these are linked to the payment. So that information is not going to be included in the balance. The balance is going to look at column E. So remember, we began with 2434. We've had a $100 debit, and then 1,800 and 2,500 credits, and then minus 800. Now, you might be looking at that and thinking, that doesn't add up. Correct, it doesn't add up because remember, it's all about today's date. The current balance is as of this date. The credit card payment is in the future. That's on the 26th of February, so it's not included in the balance displayed. So 2434 minus 100 plus 1,800 plus 2,500 does equal 6634. Perfect. As you're entering transactions in this worksheet, you can also mix up different months. Again, column A, it doesn't matter if the transaction is in the past, in the future. Really, all you want to be concerned with is that the transaction falls within the starting date. that you entered on the monthly template. So again, that was January 1st. So anything from January 1st until the end of this spreadsheet, the end of when we're using this file, is going to be summed here. But it won't be displayed in the current account balance unless it's within today's date. So that's the basics for the data entry. In the next tutorial, we'll look at the dashboard and details information.